my name is Rachel. Welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be talking a little bit about The Sims 4. So as someone who plays The Sims 4 almost every day, I have a lot of opinions on what are the best and worst packs for the game. And I've already talked a lot about which ones I think are the best, so today we are tackling the worst. Keep in mind though, this is just my opinion. Every Simmer is different, so you might feel differently about these packs. Let's find out. So my first pack is Journey to Batuu, the game pack. I love Star Wars as much as the next girl, but in my opinion, the Journey to Batuu game pack, which was released back in 2020, is pretty much useless, and I can't think of a single reason why you need to have this pack. It does contain a whole new destination world, which is obviously Batuu, and within this world you can undergo various Star Wars themed activities, like go on missions, build and fight with your own lightsaber, etc. But once the initial novelty of Star Wars in The Sims 4 wears off, there's not really a place for this world in The Sims. So I don't recommend getting this pack unless you're a huge Star Wars fan and just want to experience the fusion, in which case I will warn you that it does get old fast. Now we're going to move on to the second pack on this list, which is Bust the Dust. So released back in 2021, the Bust the Dust kit is unique because it was really the first gameplay only expansion pack kit to hit The Sims 4. But unfortunately, it was a massive disappointment. So the pack is meant to add realism to the game by giving each house a cleanliness level that can be brought up, you guessed it, as your Sims clean. But the gameplay tends to be really bugged and broken even to this day. And since this pack doesn't really include any stuff aside from the gameplay of it, these bugs render the pack almost kind of useless. I don't recommend it unless you're willing to roll the dice on whether or not it works. Because in some of my saves where I use it, the dust does work pretty well, but then in 90% of them, it doesn't work so well, and I almost always have it turned off. So it's kind of one of those situations where you kind of just have to test it and see if you like it. But for the most part, this kit is a little bit useless in my opinion. So moving on to the third pack on this list, it is My First Pet Stuff Pack. So next is the My First Pet Stuff pack, which is the oldest pack on this list so far, since it came out in 2018. And although it does include a lot of different stuff, like furniture and cast items, I'm placing it on this list because it's partially dependent on another pack, namely Cats and Dogs. That's right, this pack was a new concept for the Sims franchise because it was a DLC that actually required another DLC to work fully. So while there are some items in My First Pet Stuff that are base game compatible, there are many items you can't unlock unless you also have Cats and Dogs. Plus, if that wasn't bad enough, I think that most of the stuff in this pack is pretty lame anyway, and I rarely find a place for any of it in my builds. Like, the blinds are pretty much the only thing I use for it, unless of course I happen to find a very rare use for those decals, but that is super duper rare. So moving on to another game pack, this one is Outdoor Retreat. So we finally made it back to a pack that actually isn't that bad. I definitely would consider buying this one. So the Outdoor Retreat game pack, which was released in 2015, it includes the ability to let your sim go vacationing in Granite Falls, and has some gameplay surrounding that experience and even some extra items. So why is that on this list, you may ask? Because I think in comparison to some other Sims 4 packs, this one is pretty weak. The vacation world is fun and all, but it's something you'll probably only end up using on occasion, and the items don't work in very many builds. In fact, I find that I only use them for 1890s builds, or just like super duper rustic ones, but I don't really build that often in that style, so it's a little bit difficult for me to say how often the build items are used. But this pack may not be the worst, but it is definitely far from being the best, and for that reason I think it is skippable, especially if you're trying to save a little bit on money and only get the quintessential packs. Next on this list is a pack that I honestly almost rated higher than Batuu, and that is Luxury Party Stuff. So coming in at number 5, we have the Luxury Party Stuff Pack. I literally do not have anything nice to say about this one. It was released in 2015, which is the only reason why I put it at 5th on the list. And it only really has a few items, all which are party themed, of course. And it literally has nothing to do with your Sim's actual ability to party, because that's controlled with a separate DLC, aka the Sims 4 Get Together. So it's pretty much a waste of money. Unless you like glowing blocks or balloons, I would say you don't need to waste your money on this one. There also has been a new kit released called, I think it's something party. I don't even remember. It was like just released, and it has a lot of party stuff in it. So honestly, I would recommend probably getting that one if you want to get some like extra party stuff over luxury party stuff, just because, yeah, luxury party stuff is pretty much useless in my opinion. Keeping with the theme of kind of crappy stuff packs, we're moving on to spooky stuff. Our next pack, the Spooky Stuff Pack, was also released in 2015 and actually does include a party feature of its own. Because with the Spooky Stuff Pack, you can unlock the ability to throw a spooky party, as well as some clothing items, a few other Halloween themed activities, and some music. The best part of this pack, in my opinion, is the Halloween party feature and the pumpkins. Since I really enjoy using the pumpkins for my spooky builds, from base games debug, I don't actually own spooky stuff, because I thought it was a little bit of a waste of money just to pay for the Halloween party feature and the pumpkins. But I will say that out of this list, this one is probably the only one that I don't own that I would consider buying. But overall, I would say that this pack is far from being necessary, and similarly to the Outdoor Retreat pack, it just isn't as good as some of the other Sims 4 packs out there. Moving on to number 7, it is the Dine Out game pack. So the Dine Out game pack came out in 2016 and initially seemed like a pretty decent pack, since it adds restaurants and the ability to eat out in your Sim's world, as well as the ability for your Sim to run a restaurant themselves. Of course, some items in Cast and Build and Buy were also included, but I don't really use the Build and Buy ones often, so that's kind of a hit and go subject. But as always with the packs on this list, there is one big issue. It doesn't work. It's known to be extremely buggy and sometimes doesn't even work at all unless you use Carl's Dine Out Reloaded mod. So overall, I don't think this mod is really worth the trouble of buying the entire pack, because even though the premise is cool, it still doesn't add a lot to the game. Moving on now, we're going to have a pretty controversial one here with the Seasons expansion pack. So at number 8, we have the Seasons expansion pack, and this might surprise some people. So released back in 2018, this pack contains the addition of seasons and weather to the game, plus various seasonal activities, some build and buy and cast items, a few new deaths, a new career, and a couple new traits, as well as some other things. But my big issue with the Seasons expansion pack is that it was labeled an expansion pack, when in my opinion it's a little more like a game pack and doesn't add enough to the game to be marketed as an expansion. In fact, it's the only expansion pack that doesn't come with a new world. And personally, I feel like seasons are something that should be part of the base game anyway, because they're pretty important in terms of adding realism to your playthroughs. It's sort of like weather. Like, why would that be locked behind a paywall? Like, it's not like you go outside and you have to pay for rain. So it just seems a little bit odd that we would have to pay $40 for seasons and weather. But I wouldn't suggest that you buy this unless you're like really into the build and buy items. But I just want you to know going into it, if you do buy it, that it isn't as thorough as the other expansion packs. Keeping with the theme of expansion packs that let me down, we are going to move on to the 9th item on this list, which is the Get Famous expansion pack. So this is another addition to the list that might be a bit controversial, and that's the Get Famous expansion pack. This expansion pack was released in 2018 and actually does have a lot to it. Items, a new world, new gameplay, etc. But here's the thing. I think that if you're trying to figure out which expansions you should prioritize getting, this one should land pretty low on the list because it's just not necessary for the majority of gameplay. Unless you want to have celebrity sims, you probably won't end up using it that often. I know that I thought I would use it a lot more often than I do in my gameplay, and the build my items are really like overdone, kind of rich bougie, and they just honestly end up taking a lot more money than they're worth. Moving on to our last item on this list is the Poolside Splash Kit. So lastly, we have the Poolside Splash Kit, which was released in 2023. So this kit literally only contains various swimwear, so it's a kind of basic kit in my opinion. And once again, it's kind of niche, so you probably won't use it that often. Because really, how often do your Sims throw a pool party? Like, I know for me, I don't throw pool parties like hardly ever. And if I do, then they're just gonna wear one of these swimsuits I have from the other packs. Like, Island Living comes with a bit of swimwear, and then also you can always just get CC swimwear. And I honestly think that would probably be nicer than what was inside of this kit. And it's kind of like the sentiments collection. It's like, why would I pay $5 for underwear when I'm not going to ever probably use it unless I'm using it for swimwear? Which again just brings me back to my point about the Poolside Splash Kit. So Poolside Splash and the sentiments are kind of ranked the same in my opinion, but I went ahead and put Poolside Splash on the list just because I could at least see why you would get the sentiments pack for like pajamas maybe, because they could maybe, some of them could dual as pajamas and swimwear. But the Poolside Splash is just swimwear and there's really no way to get around that. So in conclusion, that is all I have to really talk about today, and those are the 10 worst Sims 4 packs in my opinion. I'd love to hear you guys' opinion in the comments. Do you agree with this list? Can you think of any more Sims pack that don't live up to the hype? And I would love to hear if you guys have any more videos similar to this that we'd like to hear my opinion on, like packs for any other game that you know that I play or anything like that. And if you guys don't mind, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye!